Hello everybody and welcome back to World Talks. Now it's time to bring in a guest to discuss the matter that we just introduced, which is abortion, of course. After the abortion protest outside the Polish parliament on Tuesday, the idea of a referendum on this divisive issue has resurfaced. But Polish women's rights activists are against it. The discussion is growing heated and could become an issue in the 2025 presidential elections in Poland. And now here to discuss this issue is Jowanka Jakubek-Lalik, Associate Professor at the Faculty of Law and Administration at Warsaw University. Hello, and thank you for joining us today on World Talks.
Good morning, Tom. Thank you for having me.
Yes, now, of course, we're back at the discussion of abortion, quite divisive issue, and disputes around abortion have returned with all force in Polish political life. In your opinion, what is the image that we can kind of infer from this at this point concerning this particular issue in Polish society?
Well, first of all, there is a lot of frustration after what happened in the parliament, that the depenalization of abortion has failed. So there is a lot of criticism in relation to Donald Tusk's government because the government basically did not deliver what it promised to deliver. Also, there is a lot of criticism towards one of the coalition partners, so Polish Peasants' Party, which actually voted against this depenalization of abortion law. And especially as we can see on Polish streets, there are a lot of protests. Women are protesting because they are extremely frustrated, extremely disappointed by not having the rights that were promised to be delivered by the Donald Tusk's government. This is why the situation currently is quite tense. And also, I think there is a big tension between the coalition partners. So the parties which are forming the coalition government now in Poland. So the situation is quite interesting indeed.
Now, I think to put it in deeper context for an international viewer, if we look at Polish society, I mean, Catholicism is, well, it's a major force here in the country. There's still a lot of very religious people. And do you think that this may be the reason why it's been so difficult for the government to kind of go out on a limb on this particular issue and to be able to liberalize the abortion laws, at least wind them back to what they were before 21?
I'm not sure that Catholicism is still this kind of key factor in the aspect of abortion law, because if we look at the opinion polls, the vast majority of the Polish society is in favor of liberalization of the abortion law. Also, the influence of Catholic Church is no longer that prevailing as it used to be. I think it's declining in recent years. So this is not a major factor. I think the major factor in the current situation is the estimation of the Polish Peasants' Party about their electorate and their political preferences. And here I think that actually the leaders of Polish Peasants' Party might be mistaken, because even their electorate might not be that conservative as they think.
Now, there's this idea of a referendum. If we look at Ireland, which had that referendum, and then which makes the result of which makes binding on the politicians. Would a referendum here in Poland be a good idea? Maybe not such a good idea. Why are the women's rights groups so far against holding a referendum on the issue?
Indeed, there are pros and cons in favor of and against of the referendum. So first of all, there is an issue: should women's rights, which are human rights, be voted in a referendum? Yes. So this is a very, let's say, basic question that we should be asking. Yes. The second thing is actually, even if we consider referendum, what exactly the question in the referendum would look like. Yes, because normally in the referendum there is this specificity of a question that is posed, and then this only this question is binding to the politicians, which are after that making the decisions. So here I think that there are two most important challenges when it comes to choosing the referendum. On the other hand, currently we can see the actually political stall in the parliament. So I'm not sure to what extent the ruling parties will be able to reach a consensus and move forward with liberalization of abortion laws. For the time being, the only, let's say, legal instrument that is in the hands of the government are issuing the internal instructions to the public prosecution not to pursue the proceedings against people who could be accused of helping, assisting in abortion. But when it comes to the political situation, I don't think that much can be done. Otherwise, they should just reach another consensus in the coalition parties.
Now, some would say that it depends on exactly what is in the provisions of the proposed law. The one that failed in Parliament, do you think it went too far in some areas, and that's why the Polish Peasants' Party didn't support with their votes? Was it too extreme in some areas, or is there a bare minimum?
It was not extreme at all. It was a bare minimum, I would say. This is also why it made so many people frustrated and angry and disappointed. Because actually now we are not speaking about the law that would really liberalize access to abortion in Poland. We are speaking about basics. And let us not forget that since 2020, since the Constitutional Tribunal made the judgment to actually even limit more the access to abortion, which was already before that very, very limited. So currently in Poland, abortion is only permitted in two cases. So one case is if it's a result of a criminal act, and the second case when the life of or health of the woman, of the mother, is in danger. However, even in the second case, there are many instances when actually even then women are denied abortion. And in last years, we had cases where actually women died because they were denied access to abortion because of their health issues. So it is an extremely sensitive situation. And even this limited intervention in the law that would help to guide women's health and women's lives were denied to women. This is why there is such a big frustration.
Now, abortion as a topic will certainly be a big issue in next year's presidential elections here in Poland. How do you think that this one issue, how big of a role do you think it'll play in that election?
It can play a substantial role, in my view, because the current president, who is coming from the Law and Justice Party, he is very much against abortion, and he put his position straight in many instances, on many occasions. The civic platform candidate from the Civic Coalition, from the Liberal Party, he's underlining his position that he's in favor of women's rights and liberalization of access to abortion. So for sure it will be an important factor, and looking at the streets, looking how salient this issue is, how important this issue is for Polish people, how big support for the liberalization of access to abortion is in Poland, we can see that this might be one of the most important factors in the upcoming presidential elections.
Now, concerning this recent bill that failed in the parliament, are there going to be attempts, do you think that there will be attempts to try and get it through one way or the other, perhaps introduce it again as a piece of legislation?
That's an interesting question. I think it's up to the Prime Minister to actually prove his agency. Yes, because this is what he promised. This is what was one of the, let's say, three main cornerstones of milestones of his leadership and to his government. So when he was winning the elections last year, he promised to deliver the rule of law reform. He promised to deliver liberalization of abortion, and he promised to deliver the civil partnerships for people of the same sex. So this is one of the very important aspects to consider, to what extent he is really in charge and to what extent he can provoke the kind of agreement between the coalition partners. So on one hand, he has the left-wing party, who is for sure the leading force in trying to provide this access to abortion in Poland. On the other hand, there is this other two coalition parties who are, let's say, more conservative, but the biggest obstacle in this case is the Polish Peasants' Party. So depending on the government and the agency of the Prime Minister, they should be able to reach some kind of conclusion and some kind of agreement. However, just to also note this, is important to remember that the Polish president still might not be willing to sign any liberalization of access to abortion, because he made his position very clear. He's against any form of liberalization of access to abortion.
Right, which also begs the question back to the ruling coalition, since they ran on that platform of trying to liberalize this particular law. In the absence of being able to accomplish that, how much support do they lose from their electorate, from people who voted for them on this very issue?
Well, it's difficult to judge. We would need to look at the specific opinion polls to be able to assess it in a more concrete way. But for sure, there is a lot of disappointment and frustration. But on the other hand, Polish electorate, those people who are now disappointed, they don't really have any alternative, because the alternative is much, much worse. For the past 8 years, the government, which was the conservative right-wing government, it was only made the access to abortion even more restrictive. So to whom to turn to, actually? That is the question, yes? The only party which is very, very much in favor is the left-wing party, and then we have the civic platform, the coalition, the civic coalition parties who are liberal parties and also are in favor of the liberalization of the access, but then all the other parties are much more conservative, and they will not provide any liberalization of the law.
Jowanka Jakubek-Lalik, Associate Professor, Faculty of Law and Administration at the University of Warsaw. Thank you very much for joining me today here on TVP World.
Thank you, Don.
We appreciate your analysis. Thanks. And that concludes this edition of World Talks. Thanks for joining us, and stay with us for more on TVP World.